Fear is something every single one of us has experienced. Even the most courageous, bravest people experience fear. But what happens if you feel fear all the time, or you really struggle with overcoming your fears and you can't control it? That's what we'll go into today, and how to overcome fear when it feels like it always controls you. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy, and if you are new here, welcome. I am a life and relationship coach, and on this channel we get to the root of the issue and we learn how to heal and deal. So if that's your thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to be a part of the fam. And if you already are a subscriber, I really appreciate you so much. Also, if you're interested in any of my coaching services, or you're interested in taking my new course, 11 Weeks to Break Free from the Past, all of it is in the link down below. Let's get into today's video. So fear is the perceived threat of physical or emotional harm, real or imagined. So this could mean you being afraid to start your own business because you're afraid it will fail. It could be that you're afraid to go into a relationship because you fear getting hurt. It could be that you fear crossing the street because you're afraid of getting hit by a car. Like I said, everyone experiences some type of fear, but what if it always controls you? What if you were someone that's fearful every day of small mundane things like cooking, or going places, or going on the phone? If you are someone that experiences that level of fear, which you usually generalize anxiety, but if you experience that level of fear, it's because of your childhood. It's because somewhere down the line in childhood, you didn't have stability and you felt unsafe. So because of this, it can cause you to think of worst case scenario, or always think of the potential negative outcome of how things can go. And this could be because you dealt with it firsthand, where negative things were always happening and you always had to prepare for them, or you're always afraid of it happening, or because your parents always talked worst case scenario and they always made it feel like you needed to always think negative worst case scenario and how to deal with it. So basically, if you are someone that's fearful all the time, or you are very fear-based, it's because you're hyper aware to your surroundings and the outcome of what could possibly happen. So basically, if you are someone where fear controls you, it's because you most likely have unresolved trauma. This could be from divorced parents, lack of having security. Maybe you grew up in poverty. Maybe you grew up with unstable parents. You grew up with abusive parents. You grew up having health issues as a child. You saw someone have health issues as a child. You dealt with loss, or you experienced an accident, or you saw someone experience an accident. So all of this feeling unsafe, and you not feeling like you had a stable, concrete background to fall back on, that can cause you to constantly live in this fear of what is. You basically grew up to see threat everywhere, and you most likely were never fully able to process this traumas, which then cause you to stay in a constant fear state. And you constantly living in fear can control you and your decisions. You may mainly make decisions out of fear. You have fears of being abandoned, fear that no one will like you, fear that you will fail, fear of being embarrassed, fear you will die, or fear experiencing any type of pain. Your meter to determine when to take risks is off because you always feel in danger and you always feel that everything is a threat. So that's if you are on the extreme end of where fear controls you. Then there's the other situations like I had talked about, where you're just afraid to do certain things and you prevent yourself from doing it. So there's different scales where you can be at when it comes to fear. Okay, now that we went through the root of fear, do you want to hear something crazy? Fear and excitement are the same physical state. We feel the exact same physical sensations when we feel fear and excitement, meaning you get that adrenaline rush, your heart palpitates, you get butterflies in your stomach, you feel sweaty. The only difference is when you associate, when you put the words, I'm nervous, or I'm scared, or I'm fearful, versus when you say I'm excited, is your body sees the nervousness and the fear as a disadvantage. Whereas when you feel that excitement, you determine this is excitement, your body sees it as an advantage and a positive thing. And we'll talk about how to take advantage of that in a minute. So the thing with fear is it never helps to ignore it. You know, people may say, just do it anyways, ignore it. You know, that never really works. The same thing we always talk about, don't think about, when you're told don't think about a white polar bear, you're gonna think more about it and you can't prevent it. So don't ignore when you're feeling these fears. It will just make it worse. It will just intensify it in your mind when you try to ignore it, or it will just come back tenfold. So maybe you are able to ignore it, but then it will come back worse the next time you try to deal with this fear. So how do you stop letting fear control you? First, identify, why are you so afraid? What are you afraid of? Get to the root of your fear. Are you afraid of abandonment? Are you afraid of judgment? Are you afraid of dying? Are you afraid of pain? Figure out what the root cause of your fear is. Then there's a couple options you can do. One, learn about your fear. So let's say you have a fear of car accidents. What's great is you can learn about car accidents. You can learn about the statistics. You can learn about how cars work. You can learn how to safely drive. You can learn how to deal with certain situations to prevent accidents. You know, learning, a lot of times fears, majority of times fear is because of the uncertainty, because of, you know, the unknown. So when you take away some of that uncertainty and you learn, knowledge is power, you become less afraid of it. There are certain situations you can do that with. Then there's other situations that you can learn, like for instance, social anxiety, you can learn about certain things, but it doesn't entirely help because it's more of an experience based, that when you have some of these fears, it's because you're building this story in your mind of what will happen. So when this happens, there's a couple things you want to do. One, when you're telling yourself those negative stories, you want to immediately break the pattern, because we work we as humans, we're habitual. We work on habits, and so that's what we did in order to survive for so long. So when there's a situation, our brain will immediately go to the same thoughts, neural pathways, the same exact thought patterns, deal with it in the exact same way. So in order to break those habits, so let's say for instance, anytime you have a social event coming up and you go in the car and you get really nervous and you build this story of, I'm gonna mess up my words, no one's gonna like me, I don't know what's gonna come, I don't want awkward silence, you're filling these stories, you're gonna be terrified, and it may get so bad that you turn the car around and you don't even want to go to that social event. You talk yourself out of it. So the first thing you want to do is break that pattern, and breaking the pattern, you can do anything. You can do deep breathing, which actually that's really helpful because a lot of your major emotions come from your amygdala, from that emotional part of your brain, from that survival instinct part of your brain. Your amygdala is in control of your emotional reactions. Now, when you take deep breaths and you break patterns, you awaken the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of managing your emotions. So emotional reactions, managing your emotions. You want them to be best friends. You want to be able to manage your emotions. You still want those emotional reactions because they help you to tell you things, but you want to manage those emotions. So breaking the pattern, so going back to breaking the pattern, you could start humming a tune, you could say cancel, you could say shh, it's okay, don't worry, just break the pattern some way. You can literally jump up and down, doesn't matter, you can do absurd things, you can do whatever you want, just do something that breaks the pattern that's different than what you're used to doing. Then shift what you're telling yourself and pinpoint on thinking how you'll be excited to do something, how exciting it could be. So if you're going into a social event and you have really bad social anxiety, imagine how excited you are to talk to a specific person. Or imagine how excited you are to maybe go and dance, and pinpoint yourself on that imagery and label it as excitement, so that it's a positive experience and you are more likely to want to go and do that thing. So it changes the complete emotional reaction and you have more of a positive experience, and it lessens those fears. Because here's the thing, when we're afraid, a lot of times we prevent ourselves from doing it. We think it's a threat, we think it's something we have to stay away from. Like I said, we talk ourselves out of it. So then it becomes more of a threat in our mind of something we need to stay away from. So when you shift what you tell yourself and you see it from a different perspective, and you actually go and do that thing and you see it's not a threat, and you condition your mind and you realize, oh, this isn't a threat, it calms your nervous system and it no longer is seen as a threat, and you come from a place of bravery and you'll become more courageous. And that goes into my next point of, when you're scared, do it anyway. I don't mean things that are like really threatening, like, you know, you still need to trust your intuition. Don't go and do something where you see like, okay, that's where mitigating risk comes into play. Like, you need to mitigate risk, and we'll talk about that in a second. But whenever I'm scared, like, I'm someone who I'm scared all the time, and when I feel that fear, I'm like, okay, I know I need to do this anyway. I know, since I was a teenager, I would condition myself. I was like, okay, I'm scared, I know I need to do this anyway. Because when I'm there, I'm like, okay, my fears are not as bad. It was just a story that I was telling myself. So same thing is, when you're scared, you want to do it anyway. Like, your brain is lying to you and telling yourself all these stories, and you want to do it anyway, because those stories, you have to be able to realize that's my imagination. Your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, and one of the reasons why you talk yourself out of it is because your brain really thinks that it's happening, that when you go into this social event that you're really, you know, no one's gonna like you and you're gonna get rejected, and so you really feel that's gonna happen. So of course you're gonna turn around and not go to that social event. That makes perfect sense. Now, when you do something that you're afraid of, does that mean your worst fears won't happen? No, they may very well happen. Life may prove you right that it was scary, but this is where bravery and courage comes in. And when you do these scary things, or the things you're afraid of, these emotions turn into this anxiety and these fears. They manifest and they turn into bravery and courage. That's where bravery and courage comes into play. So just understand, it's okay to be scared and have fears, but you don't want these fears to control you. Life is scary and scary things happen, but you have to think, okay, would I rather live my life in fear and never get to do the things I want and always make decisions off of my fear? Or do I want to do the things that I actually want? Do I want to experience things? And that goes into the mitigating risk. So being able to determine, because your risk meter is broken, like we had talked about. So seeing, okay, so if I go to this social event, maybe I will risk potential embarrassment, or I will risk maybe potential of there being silence, but I'm okay with that risk. I want to take that risk because the benefit, the results way overtake these risks. Now there's other situations that will be like really risky where you don't want to take the risk, like skydiving. Pretty risky. There's a higher chance of death. Maybe you don't want to take that risk. You mitigate the risk and say, no, this is too risky. I don't want to do this. Or maybe you determine the risk is worth it. That's how you mitigate risk. This is where you want to use logic and facts to be able to deal with those fears. Okay, what are the facts of the situation? What is the possibility of this can happen? Am I okay with that risk? Do I accept this risk and this choice? Is it going to help me reach my end goal, whatever my end goal is? And the last thing is, if you are someone that's afraid all the time, every day, you need to do something that makes you uncomfortable every day. Take a risk every day. This will not only help you so that way you lessen that fear response, but also help you to trust yourself in situations and knowing that you got you in those situations. Life is scary, and you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. We never know. When you go out the door, something bad can always happen, but something can also equally bad happen when you're inside too. I mean, obviously it's more risky when you go outside, but no matter what, you're a living, breathing being, and that's just a human experience where negative things are going to happen. So you have to decide, you know, how do you want to live your life? Do you want to live in this fear, or do you want to do something about this fear? In order to do something about this fear, you have to take those risks, and you want to do something that makes you uncomfortable so that you not only feel confident in yourself, but you actually are living your life. So bottom line is, when you're having those fears, you want to identify what it is, learn as much as you can, turn your fears into excitement. Don't play into those scary stories. Do your fears anyway, mitigate risk and do your fears anyway. Lean into your fears, have that bravery and that courage. Mitigate risk so you learn how to trust yourself rather than trusting the programming that you've been programmed to think, which is worst case scenario, don't do this, this is dangerous. It's okay to take risks, and you have to get comfortable with taking those risks. That's what life's all about. And do things you want. Make choices based on things you want rather than your fear of what could happen. The more uncomfortable things you do, the more your anxieties turn into bravery and courage. So what do you guys think? Leave it all in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share with someone that you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye guys. I have a dilemma. Usually I put my Christmas tree in this area, and this is where I do my videos. Now I gotta figure out another area to put my Christmas tree. You feel what I'm saying? First world problems. For those of you that celebrate Christmas, what kind of tree do you guys usually get? You get a fake tree, or do you have a fake tree, or you get a real tree? And which do you think is better? Leave it in the comments below. I'm team real tree. If you have a stinky house, which I don't, my house always be smelling good, but if you got a stinky house, just get a fresh Christmas tree and it will make all the difference. You'll be smelling like you're in the forest.